Being let go is never easy. Losing a job in the best scenario means losing your income, which isn't the most pleasant thing one can experience. But that day, Sam loses much more than a job. In the opening scene, as he is let go, he asks his boss about his mother. As it turns out, the old man and Sam's mother had something going on in the past, but it all feels like a distant memory now. The young man has a very interesting response to that. As rage comes over him, he starts flooding the room with it and is let go by security officers. Where that rage was coming from, we don't know. After the weirdest firing interview ever, we are assured that Sam is definitely a man with many secret insecurities. It is later that afternoon when a groundbreaking change occurs in his life. Standing in the subway, exposing the best choice of tie color ever, he brushes hands with a stranger girl. Touch is over in an instant, but it engraves something extremely meaningful in both minds. Throughout this conversation, a powerful gravitational space is created, and so, once Sam moves his hand away, the hand of the girl follows after all on its own. The girl simply chased with her hand, but the man did something much bigger once the two left the train. He follows her home. No, it's not creepy at all. It's just the gravity and nothing more. The girl is only a little bit concerned. Later that night, that girl, Susan, is convinced by her friend to go on a double date. As it turns out, she has not been so successful in her private life, and so her will to re-engage in that field is quite scarce. At first, she tries to tell her friend that he met some guy in the subway today, but that doesn't really work. There's not a big chance that they are going to ever meet each other again. In short, if she still fears dying alone, she should pick up her insecurities, throw them out of the window, and go on that double date. In the meantime, Sam's mother is also preparing to go out with some man, and of course, her son is not so thrilled about that. In fact, when Sam visits her that evening, a variety of colorful conflicts are revealed in front of our eyes. There is smoking that Sam doesn't like. There is dishonesty about the past and the present. There is a current dating problem. There is a job issue, the money issue, the food issue. In short, if Bob Marley had ever taken a peek inside this household, he would have never written 3 Little Birds. One thing to clarify. Sam doesn't live with his mother, but if the money issue isn't taken care of soon, he might actually have to move in. Just imagine his dreadful night then. Speaking of dreadful nights, Susan wishes she was in a crypt or a murky dungeon with bears roaming in dark corners rather than in front of these two guys. Loud and empty, the men are worse than Dumb and Dumber, but clearly her friend has no standards. Thankfully, Susan isn't like her, so when Alain Delon tries to kiss her, she makes up the most disgusting excuse to make him stop. After this delightful night, Sam receives a job interview offer through voicemail. It is all his mother's doing again. She seems to have called up another one of her past partners and asked him to get a job for her son. The interview goes quite smoothly. This old man seems to be quite different from any other ones that he met over the years. The business he runs aids elders in everything they might need. He seems to be quite passionate about it, but something else intrigues the young man more. As the interviewer says, his heart was once broken severely by Sam's mother. Perhaps this latter part is what forces Sam to show passion during the interview. He wants to get to know this man and his business better. Fatefully enough, the two rogue planets run into one another again in the next scene. This time, however, the bond between them seems to be weakened. After the initial surprise effect, the smile on both faces gradually fades away until the train stops at Sam's station. Without looking at Susan, he gets out and walks home. He is already opening his gate when he looks back and suddenly sees Susan. There's no question about it now. The two are cut the same exact way. They truly are each other's soulmates. That evening, great news is revealed to Susan. As it turns out, her friend and roommate are pregnant with a child. Soon, she is going to need a bigger space for her family, so Susan must move out within the course of the next few months. From the girl's perspective, it is a little unfair, but she doesn't fight back much. Instead, she chooses to reveal something very distressing about her friend's future husband. As it turns out, that night, after the double date, she went to the bathroom nude when she ran into the man. The future husband didn't cover up his eyes and turned away. He lingered, and it is not something a husband material would do. Unfortunately, her friend focuses on something completely different. Susan slept nude again. What a wench. She wants her out as soon as tomorrow. The next morning, all Sam expects from his new job is smiles and happy interactions. But instead, he receives shouting, mistrust, toilets, resistance, some vomit, and a lot of pain. In short, he receives reality in his face. Perhaps this is why he is particularly eager to get onto the subway train later that evening. Looking around, he searches for Susan, but he won't catch a glimpse of her on the train today. He will see her somewhere much more unexpected. In the next scene, Sam walks up to his house, and his eyes pop out from surprise. Susan is standing in front of the gate with bags in her hands and at her feet. Upon entering the house, she suddenly starts acting as if she's his partner, just returning from a voyage in Paris. At first, Sam is startled by this, but he catches up soon enough. As the two fear revealing their true selves to each other, the man realizes he doesn't have another room to let her in, so he decides to get creative. Getting a tarp curtain from the bathroom, he stations it in front of Susan's new bed and creates a sense of privacy for her. The house is messy, so a lot of space must be freed. Interestingly enough, it is in this process of rearrangement that they start learning new things about each other. For instance, Susan realizes that Sam has a real issue with control. Thanks to his delightful mother, he seems to always assume that another person is lying to him. He has a severe problem with his lost father as well. The Soviet actor seems to have left his family when Sam was still a little boy. Sadly enough, Susan is a chronic liar. That night she lies twice, once about her not smoking cigars, and the second time about her family photos and her mother. Of course, they totally should live together. Later that night, they learn some positive stuff about each other as well. For example, Susan learns about his devotion to music and singing, and Sam learns about the fact that she has always wanted to meet a musician. She also says that she's a Hungarian princess who likes to sleep nude, so it's a total win for Sam. All jokes aside, he is really glad that she's here. His job didn't seem too terrible the next morning. One of the elderly Mr. Hill gives him a proper scare, however. When Sam arrives at his door, he receives no response from the old man and sees the groceries he brought him the last time, scattered all over his front lawn. This means that he hasn't even taken them inside the last time, and what the growing silence might mean, Sam doesn't even want to think about. Feeling responsible for the old man, he sneaks inside his house and finds an indescribable mess. In a chair in front of the TV, the old man is sitting silently, and his stillness is terrifying. Thankfully, however, Sam soon learns that the old man was just sleeping. He even prepares his lunch and helps him eat. It is in this process that he learns something very interesting about him. As it turns out, the old man's traumas complement his own. Mr. Hill seems to be a widower who treated his wife very badly. Feeling guilty, he wants to be punished by his son, to be yelled at and judged. Interestingly enough, Sam has a deep-seated, well-hidden rage towards his father too. This relationship might be helpful for both parties. That night, a delicious stuffed cabbage and a lot of made-up stories appeared on his plate. Susan seems to be a great cook and a great actress at the same time. Just as before, she engages in her role as a princess and starts talking with him from the perspective of a rogue royalty. The lies are just like the tarp in front of her bed. They are only semi-transparent, so a glimpse of truth still leaks out from their performance. And the truth is that both are frustrated and exhausted from reality. Soon, something very real frustrates Sam as well. Suddenly, a desire to listen to music comes over him, and he learns to his terror that all of his CDs have been sold for $20. This is outrageous, of course. Susan had no right to do such a thing. Their communication goes haywire after this. Sam asks her about the length of her stay quite rudely, and Susan, who's struck by this, dives back into the realm of fairy tales. Realizing that the infuriated man wants her out of his apartment, she tells him that she is only royalty from her mother's side who's now deceased. The only parent that remains is her father, who wants to marry her to a suitor she doesn't love. This is why she can never go back there. Sam feels a little bad after this historical detour. Snatching a hat from nearby, he brings upon one of his own cheerful characters and starts singing this night towards less heaviness. And so, the night ends delightfully, with a promise of deep, meaningful future relationships. Speaking of meaningful relationships, Sam is forced to get inside Mr. Hill's house through the kitchen window once more. This cannot be good for his joints, but for processing his trauma, this is the best. Today, he gets to express some of the deep, bitter emotions he's been holding on to for a very long time. When Mr. Hill demands a resentful word from his son, the young man starts acting out his truest feelings. He shames the old man for abandoning him and his mother, and lets him know how angry he is at the fact that he never even knew him. The old man fights back at first to elicit a more furious response, but when he's done fighting, he makes a pitiful picture. At this moment, Sam is very well aware that the old man is not his father, but this unusual communication still has a great effect on him. He's not so sure that he can accept his apology at this moment, but when Mr. Hill expresses his love for his son, something gets stuck in Sam's throat. Feeling his heart beating rapidly, he hears a very distant, sorrowful tune coming from the depths of his mind. Sam works till late that night and receives praise from his boss back at work. An urge to do something nice for Susan comes over to him the next morning, so he takes her to a picnic. As always, the two are wearing the pieces of their characters' personalities at this moment. But still, something is different. This time, they are telling the story of how this picnic went, as if it were a story of the past. First, the fire didn't burn, and they had to enjoy cold, hot dogs. Then a very special someone arrived, who liked to sing with his feet wet, and then it started to rain. Sam reminded himself of something very important his father told him afterward. When acting, you have to do the thing that scares you the most. In Sam's case, it is obvious what he must do now, but unfortunately, the rain ruins everything. Coming back home, he's frustrated and apologetic, but Susan looks deep into his eyes and tells him that it's all right. No matter how frustrating in the beginning, the story of the picking ends with their first kiss. The kiss drills holes inside the curtain between their beds, so now Susan can peek outside from it and tell him that she should meet his mother. What a great idea it is. Sam is, of course, thrilled. The next workday passes as ordinarily as ever, until the main character finds something extremely unusual in Mr. Hill's house. The old man is already sleeping when he bids him farewell and decides to head out. But unexpectedly, he feels an urge to check Mr. Hill's bedroom. This is the only room he hasn't seen and tidied up until now. And furthermore, the old man has said some foul things about it. All of this aside, the sight of what the bedroom really looks like drops Sam's jaw to the floor. It is neat and orderly, but the dust rules the entire area. The photo of Mr. Hill's wife is hung near one corner, and the things she used to own are still lying beneath it. It is a sad place full of memories and sorrow. That evening, Susan and Sam's mother hit it off immediately. Susan is a makeup specialist, and this subject bonds the two ladies quite quickly. There is another subject, much more important, that is soon put forward, however. When Sam leaves to get some food for dinner, Susan mentions his Soviet actor father and expresses how much she wants to meet him. The mother's expression changes abruptly here. As happiness and excitement flush down from her face, she reveals to Susan that neither Sam nor herself knows who his father is. Sam must have made all of this Soviet actor thing up. That night, Susan revealed everything to him and asked him to be totally honest. This moment can turn into something extremely meaningful, but unfortunately, the man chooses to remain loyal to his delusions. Still saying that his father is a great Soviet actor and her mother is a liar, he soon gets frustrated. This is when Susan decides to offer him something. If he comes out in full honesty and reveals some of the lies he has told, then she will do the same. This promise of exchanged honesty sounds great, but all Sam can hear is the fact that Susan has lied to him. Exploding in rage, he stands up and throws the curtain away, making the girl afraid. Standing up to seek safety, Susan finds herself totally nude in front of the man, demanding truth and honesty, and so she decides to let it all out. The truth is not just bitter, it is tragic beyond comprehension. As it turns out, her mother was by her father over a bottle of alcohol that was hidden beneath Susan's bed. She was only little when this happened. The alcoholic father became dangerous, so her mother put the bottles away, where he wouldn't have searched for them. One day, he came home drunk and, as the fight ensued, demanded his bottles. The screaming started, and soon, a glimpse of fear was felt through the exclamations. This is when little Susan decided to reveal the bottles, to make it all stop. But unfortunately, the terrible thing had already happened by then. She has never felt safe afterward. No wonder she is always hiding under a thick blanket of lies. At this moment, Susan is as vulnerable as anybody can be. Revealing all her wounds, she trusts that she won't be hurt. But unfortunately, Sam is not the safe person she needs now. Thanks to all his rage and trauma, he is not ready to leave her, and so, thinking that she is still lying, he tells her to move out of his apartment tomorrow. The next morning, he climbs into Mr. Hill's house through the window as always, when he notices the old man lying on the floor. Having trouble breathing, the old man seems to have felt dizzy and stumbled on his feet. As Sam sees it, the old man needs to lie down, so he takes him to his bedroom. Mr. Hill resists as an exhausted old man who can resist a young one. He begs and pushes himself backward, afraid to go inside. But still, Sam keeps taking him toward his fears. Unfortunately, the room is much more dangerous for the man than stumbling on his feet. The room contains memories and mistakes he's been running away from his whole life. The room is a trap full of faults he never owned, and so, upon setting his foot inside, the old man loses consciousness and passes away. Returning to the office, Sam is sure he's going to get fired. In fact, he wants to be fired, to be punished for his mistakes, and to be judged beyond comprehension. Just like Mr. Hill, he doesn't want to own his mistake and move forward with his life with more wisdom. He wants to get free from guilt by being punished, but unfortunately, this isn't the way it works. Still, when the boss decides not to punish Sam, the young man decides to do it himself. He quits his job. Just like before, after losing his occupation, the young man goes to his mother. This time, the woman is not alone. She has a date, but not for long. Immediately after Sam storms inside the house and asks who his father is, the man stands up and leaves. The young man immerses himself in his usual behavior then. Untrusting and insecure, he demands the truth from his mother and tries to assert control over her. He needs to know who his father is, and he will never believe anything he doesn't like to hear. This is why he keeps asking the question, even though the woman promises that she doesn't know. Over and over again she repeats that she was a junkie who slept with a lot of men, but Sam won't believe it. He just won't accept it. He has a picture of a man holding a baby, the poof that his father stuck around at some point. He thinks this revelation must force the woman to say the truth at least. But as the mother says, this isn't a picture of Sam and his father. It is a picture of her and her dad, who never stuck around either. It is a sad thing indeed. Despite her desperate attempts, nobody has ever stuck around for her. This hurts Sam a lot. Throughout all this time, this picture has been the main pillar of the lies he has been feeding himself, but now it is all broken and torn apart. Maybe his mother is right. Maybe for once, he should learn how to trust. And maybe he has made the most terrible mistake of his life by letting Susan go. When he returns home, she is already gone, and the silence is hurting. The girl seems to have left nothing but her family photo. There is an address on the back of the picture, so with this, he can trace her back, apologize for the mistrust, and rescue her from the terrible father. In the next scene, Sam gets his job back, borrows a van for the weekend, and drives to Susan's family address. Knocking on the door, he is met with a colorful range of different personalities, some accepting and cheerful, some gloomy and aggressive. Soon, he is taken to Susan too, the girl who's grown indifferent about him. Ignoring the young man's coming, she says nothing when her father comes inside the room. The murderer acts tough, gives Sam a threatening stare down, and announces that he can stay over for dinner. The cute old man threatens to slay Sam if he ever hurts his daughter, but he does this in a joking manner. In all truth, he doesn't seem to be a terrible guy. Before the dinner, he even expresses gratitude towards God that he brought this nice man into his household. He mentions his late wife as well, and he does that in a manner that no murderer would. A crippling feeling slips inside the story here. Perhaps Susan lied about the murder to justify her running away. This notion is quite bearable, especially in the light of this afternoon. During the dinner, the girl lies about Sam's occupation, and the father tells beautiful stories about his wife and Susan. The kind of stories that reveal his immeasurable love for his late wife and his current family. And the kind of stories that bring tears to one's eyes. Sam cannot wait to know the truth. So, perhaps this is why he decides to put the subject of his wife's passing on the table. Without thinking much about it, Sam tells the old tough man that he must feel guilty. I mean, he murdered her after all. The table soon gets cleared of all the children. High-pitched exclamations start flying from corner to corner, and the old man breaks down to pieces. Crying like a little child, he expresses his guilt, but not for the thing Sam knows of. There was no murder, there was a terrible sickness, a cancer that ended the old man's wife. And as it seems, he has never fully dealt with the crippling feeling of guilt. Beating himself for the passing of his wife, he falls down to tears at this moment. But the members of the family are only half concerned about his reaction. What they are also concerned about is the accusation that flew out of Sam's mouth a few moments back. Realizing what Susan told him, they quickly become infuriated. It's a good thing there's no time for fighting now. In the next scene, Sam tries to fight the lies with the truth. This is why he comes up to Susan and tells her all about his talent for lying to himself. He is truly great at coming up with false stories and believing them. Unfortunately, Susan doesn't associate the truth with truth. Choosing not to apologize for her lie, she doesn't accept his honesty. This is when their conversation is interrupted by one of Susan's sisters. She thinks somebody has to say something to the father. A few moments later, Sam approaches the old man and tells him that he made a mistake by calling him a murderer. Now that he realizes somebody else told him that story, and he mumbled it out by accident here. It was a mistake, and he apologizes for it. The old man shows exemplary emotional maturity at this moment. Saying that it is all right, he accepts that family dinners tend to bubble up some dark emotions from time to time. Soon, a fire starts blazing in the hearth, and a guitar appears in the hands of the old man. The song is sung, and the couple wonders for how long this dance of dishonesty will continue. Suddenly, Susan starts singing too. and Sam realizes she has the voice of a nightingale. Just like her true, vulnerable personality, it seems to have been hidden behind the mask of her lies as well. If the voice is coming out, who knows, maybe the personality will follow too. That night, the father of the family tells Sam that he is not ready to let Susan go. His daughter looks too much like her mother, and he simply cannot deal with the pain her departure would cause. Sam cannot take her away from him. The young man responds with silence, but it is obvious that he is not willing to leave without Susan by his side. The next morning, he tries to have a conversation with her in the kitchen, but the family soon starts rushing in, so he will have to postpone it. When the breakfast begins, one of the sisters asks how they met each other, so Susan starts telling a lie as always. This is when Sam cuts into her words at the speed of light and says the truth. This makes Susan recline further back into her shell. Silence falls down on the table, but not for long. Suddenly, Sam realizes how to make her come out. He needs to tell a made-up story that has lies in it but is true in essence, and so he starts painting a picture of a picking in April. Of rain and some truth, but he fills it with lies. Lies and the truths about the facts create a colorful latticework of a beautiful romantic story. But the facts are the least important things here. What matters most is the love he feels towards Susan. This is the feeling that rings in total truth and leaves no room for any kind of doubt. He wants to put her in his van and take her home, where it's safe. He wants to provide for her and care for her for the rest of his existence because he knows she is the love of his life. Little by little, Susan is lured out of her safe cage until finally, she holds out her hand and decides that it is time for change.